The Great Hall of the Galactic Council had never felt so small. Belthari looked around at the faces of her fellow council members and saw the same fear in every pair of eyes, tentacles, and optical sensors. The massive chamber could hold 10,000 beings, but today only 300 remained. The rest were dead, missing, or had fled to the outer rim. The holographic display in the center of the room showed the current state of their galaxy. Red zones marked the areas where the Voidborn had struck. 47 star systems gone. 12 billion souls consumed. The red zones were growing bigger every day. "We have lost contact with the Kepler defense fleet," announced General Zixtar, his insect-like mandibles clicking nervously. "That makes it our 7th fleet in 2 weeks." Belthari's crystalline body dimmed with sorrow. She had known many of those fleet commanders personally, good beings who had died trying to protect their homes. Their weapons had been useless against the Voidborn ships. Energy beams passed right through them like they were made of smoke. Plasma cannons had no effect. Even their most powerful antimatter bombs did nothing. "What about the Andromedan super-destroyers?" asked Council Member Flux, his gaseous form swirling with anxiety. "Surely their quantum disruptors can damage these creatures." "The Andromedans sent 12 of their best ships," Belthari replied, her voice echoing strangely through her crystal structure. "We found the wreckage floating in space 3 days later. Whatever these Voidborn are, they can turn our own technology against us." The silence that followed was broken only by the soft humming of the translation devices. Representatives from hundreds of worlds sat in their specialized chambers, breathing their required atmospheres, maintaining their needed temperatures. The galaxy's greatest minds, and they were helpless. Dr. Yindal of the Academic Consortium stepped forward. Her forearms held data tablets covered in calculations. "I have been studying the attack patterns. The Voidborn do not seem interested in conquest in the traditional sense. They consume matter and energy, converting it into something else, something we cannot detect or understand." "What do you mean?" Belthari asked. "When they finish with a system, there is nothing left, not even space dust. It is as if those stars, those planets, those people never existed at all. They are removing pieces of reality itself." A shudder ran through the assembly. This was worse than anyone had imagined. It was not just war or invasion. It was deletion, complete and total erasure from existence. "How long before they reach the core worlds?" someone called out from the back. Dr. Yindal checked her calculations. "At their current rate of expansion, 6 standard months. Maybe less if they split into multiple groups. 6 months. Belthari had spent 300 years serving on this council. She had seen wars, plagues, and natural disasters. But never anything like this. Never an enemy that could not be fought, could not be reasoned with, and could not be stopped. "There must be something we can do," said Ambassador Mordith, his tentacles writhing with frustration. "Some weapon we have not tried. Some tactic we have not considered." "We have tried everything," General Zixtar replied. "Conventional weapons, exotic matter bombs, dimensional warfare, even temporal displacement attacks. Nothing works. Our ships cannot even get close enough to ram them. Some kind of field around their vessels causes our technology to malfunction." Belthari had been dreading this moment, but she knew it had to be addressed. There was one option they had not discussed. One possibility that no civilized being wanted to consider. "What about the Deathworlders?" she said quietly. The reaction was immediate and loud. Gasps, clicks, hisses, and various sounds of dismay filled the chamber. Several representatives stood up in protest. "Absolutely not," declared Council Member Quintar. "Those savages are barely more civilized than wild animals." "They come from a planet that should not support life," added Dr. Voron. "The gravity alone would crush most of us, and the weather systems are completely insane. Not to mention their tendency toward violence," said Ambassador Helrix. "They have been fighting wars among themselves for their entire recorded history." Belthari had expected this reaction. Earth was considered one of the most dangerous planets in known space. The fact that any species had evolved there was considered impossible by most scientists. The humans who lived there were viewed with a mixture of fear and disgust by the galactic community. "I understand your concerns," Belthari said, raising her voice to be heard over the protests. "But consider our situation. We are facing extinction, complete erasure from reality. Perhaps beings who evolved in impossible conditions might have insights we lack." "They are primitives," snorted Council Member Vexion. "Their technology is centuries behind ours. What could they possibly do that our advanced civilizations cannot? Their technology may be primitive, but they are resourceful, Belthari replied. And they have something we seem to have lost. They still know how to fight when fighting seems impossible. Dr. Yindal looked thoughtful. There are reports from the Outer Rim, human merchant vessels that have encountered voidborn scouts. The humans survived these encounters. This caused another stir in the assembly. No one had survived a voidborn encounter. Not until now, how? General Zixtar asked. Unknown. The human reports are classified by their military. But the fact remains they are the only beings who have faced the voidborn and lived to tell about it. Belthari felt a spark of hope for the first time in weeks. We need to contact them. The humans have been exploring the Outer Rim for the last 50 years, said Ambassador Tixler. They keep to themselves mostly. Trade with a few species, but they avoid the core worlds. Can we reach them? We can try. But there is no guarantee they will help us. We have not exactly been welcoming to their kind, this was true. When humans first arrived in galactic space, they had been treated with suspicion and fear. Their requests to join the Galactic Council had been denied multiple times. They were seen as too aggressive, too unpredictable, too dangerous to be trusted with advanced technology. What choice do we have? Belthari asked the assembly. We can swallow our pride and ask for help, or we can maintain our dignity while we are erased from existence. The debate continued for hours. Some council members argued that asking the humans for help would be a sign of weakness. Others insisted that the humans could not possibly succeed where advanced civilizations had failed. A few suggested that the humans might use the crisis to demand concessions or territory. Finally, as the artificial sun of the council station began to dim, simulating nightfall, Belthari called for a vote. The result was close but clear enough. They would send a message to Earth. Compose the transmission, Belthari ordered Dr. Yindal. Make it clear that we are asking for assistance, not demanding it. Include all data we have on the Voidborn and include our apologies for past treatment of their people. You want to apologize to the Deathworlders? Councilmember Quintar asked in disbelief. I want to survive, Belthari replied. And if that means admitting we were wrong about Earth and its people, then so be it. As the council session ended and representatives returned to their quarters, Belthari remained in the Great Hall. She looked up at the holographic display showing the advancing red zones of voidborn territory. Somewhere out there in the darkness between the stars, humanity was their only hope. She just prayed the humans would answer their call. Admiral Deho stood on the bridge of the UES Indomitable, watching the stars through the main viewport. 53 years old, with gray streaking through his black hair, he had spent most of his adult life in space. The colony wars had aged him beyond his years, but they had also taught him valuable lessons about survival and sacrifice. Admiral, we're receiving a priority transmission, announced Communications Officer Park. It's coming from the Galactic Council. Deho raised an eyebrow. In his 25 years of service, the Galactic Council had never contacted human forces directly. They usually sent messages through intermediaries. If they bothered to communicate at all, put it through, he ordered. The main screen flickered to life, showing the crystalline form of Council Speaker Belthari. Her voice came through the translation matrix carrying an unusual tone of desperation. People of Earth, we come to you in our darkest hour. An enemy unlike any we have faced before threatens all life in the galaxy. We request your assistance in this matter of galactic survival. The bridge crew exchanged glances. Captain Moran stepped up beside the Admiral, her cybernetic eye glowing softly as she processed the incoming data. They're sending tactical information along with the message. Some kind of enemy called the Voidborn. Deho studied the data as it scrolled across his personal display. 47 systems destroyed. Multiple fleets eliminated. An enemy that could phase through conventional weapons and disable technology with some kind of energy field. Sir? Called out Navigator Soman from her station. The message is marked as a galaxy-wide broadcast. They're not just asking us, they're asking everyone. But we're the only ones who have survived encounters with these Voidborn, Moran observed, reading through the detailed reports. According to this data, 3 of our merchant vessels made contact with Voidborn scouts in the past month. All 3 survived, Deho remembered those reports. Captain Kim of the freighter Rising Dawn had described strange ships that seemed to exist in and out of normal space. His crew had fought them off using mining charges and improvised kinetic weapons. At the time, Command had classified the report and filed it away with hundreds of other Outer Rim encounters. They want our help, Deho said quietly. After 50 years of treating us like dangerous primitives, they want our help. The bridge fell silent. Everyone present knew the history. When humanity first developed faster-than-light travel, they had approached the galactic community with hopes of peaceful cooperation. Instead, they found fear and prejudice. Earth was deemed too dangerous, humans too violent, their methods too crude for civilized space. Captain Moran spoke first. The data shows they've tried everything else. Energy weapons, exotic matter bombs, even temporal displacement. Nothing worked. What's our current fleet strength? Deho asked. 37 vessels, replied Commander Jiwan, the fleet's tactical officer. The Indomitable. 4 heavy cruisers, 8 destroyers, 12 frigates, 6 assault carriers, 4 science vessels, and 2 support ships. Against an enemy that has destroyed multiple alien fleets? Science Officer Hyuk shook his head. Sir, with respect, this sounds like a suicide mission. Navigator Soman looked up from her station. The message includes casualty figures. 12 billion dead, sir. That's more than Earth's entire population. The bridge fell quiet again. 12 billion souls, men, women, children, families. It did not matter what species they were. That many deaths was beyond comprehension. Chief Engineer Junho, Deho called to the intercom. Report to the bridge. Junho arrived within minutes, still wiping grease from his hands. He was one of the best engineers in the fleet, capable of keeping ships running with spare parts and improvised solutions. Sir, I need to know if our ships can handle whatever energy field these Voidborn use. The reports say it causes technology to malfunction. Junho studied the technical data on his tablet. Interesting. It looks like some kind of electromagnetic interference, but operating on quantum frequencies. Our ships are designed for colony work and exploration. We use redundant systems, manual backups, and hardened electronics. We might be more resistant than their fancy alien tech. Might be? Won't know for sure until we test it, sir. Deho gathered his senior officers in the briefing room. The circular table could seat 12, but today only 6 chairs were occupied. On the main screen, a holographic map showed the current positions of human ships scattered across the outer rim. Options, Deho said simply. We could ignore the message, suggested Commander Jiwan. This isn't our fight. The galactic community has made it clear we're not welcome. 12 billion people are dead, Samin said quietly. How many more will die while we debate politics? The navigator is right, added Captain Moran. This is bigger than our feelings about the Galactic Council. Science Officer Hyuk pulled up tactical analyses on his tablet. Based on the data, we might actually have advantages the other species lack. Our weapons are primarily kinetic and chemical. If energy weapons don't work, maybe old-fashioned projectiles will. Our Marines train for boarding actions, noted Marine Colonel Bomi via video link from her ship. Most galactic species consider close combat barbaric. If these Voidborn can be boarded, we're the only ones with experience. Chief Engineer Junho leaned forward. Our ships are built tough. Colony work means dealing with radiation, asteroid fields, and equipment failures. We don't rely on fancy tech that might malfunction. Deho listened to his officers debate the possibilities. They were right about human advantages. Humanity had developed military technology based on harsh experience. The colony wars had been fought with limited resources, forcing innovation and adaptability. What about logistics? He asked. Fuel and supplies could be a problem, Moran admitted. We're designed for long-range operations, but a major fleet action could drain our reserves quickly. The council message included coordinates for supply depots, Somin noted. They're offering full logistical support. After 50 years of keeping us out, now they want to supply our weapons, G1 said with bitter humor. The question is, Hyuk said seriously, can we actually win? The reports show these Voidborn destroyed fleets much larger than ours. Deho stood up and walked to the viewport. Outside, the stars looked the same as always. But somewhere out there, an enemy was erasing entire worlds from existence. I've been thinking about the merchant ship encounters, he said. 3 different vessels, 3 different captains, all survived. What did they have in common? Kinetic weapons, Moran replied. Mining charges, railguns, even small arms fire. And something else, Deho continued. They didn't retreat. Captain Kim's report said his crew fought until the Voidborn ships withdrew. The aliens had been running from these things, but our people stood and fought. You think that made the difference? I think these Voidborn are used to easy victories. They've been facing enemies who rely on technology that they can disable. When they met humans who kept fighting with primitive weapons and stubborn determination, they weren't prepared. Deho turned back to his officers. We have advantages the rest of the galaxy lacks, but more importantly, we have something they seem to have lost. What's that, sir? Soman asked. The willingness to fight when fighting seems impossible. The debate continued for another hour. They discussed tactics, logistics, and the political implications of their decision. Some argued they owed the galaxy nothing. Others insisted that ignoring the crisis would make them no better than the council members who had rejected humanity. Finally, Deho called for quiet. I'm not ordering anyone to follow me. This is volunteer only. Any ship commander who wants to return to human space can do so with no shame. But I'm going. Not for the Galactic Council. Not for their politics or their apologies. For the 12 billion who are already dead, and the billions more who will die if we do nothing. One by one, his officers voiced their support. Captain Moran would follow him anywhere. Commander Jiwan believed humanity needed to prove itself. Navigator Soman felt they had a moral obligation to help. Science Officer Hayek was curious about the enemy's technology. Chief Engineer Junho wanted to test their ships against impossible odds. Then it's settled, Deho announced. Send a message to all human vessels in the Outer Rim. Full disclosure about the situation and our intentions. Any ship that wants to join us should rendezvous at the coordinates I'm transmitting. What about command back on Earth? Miran asked. We'll send a full report, but we won't wait for approval. By the time they debate this in committee, the galaxy could be dead. As his officers dispersed to prepare their ships, Deho remained on the bridge. Communications Officer Park reported that messages were already coming in from other human vessels. Captain Tajan of the assault carrier Storm's Edge was adjusting course to join them. Commander Wusung of the frigate Valiant had already begun combat preparations. The humans were coming together, just as they had during the colony wars. Not because they were ordered to, but because it was the right thing to do. Admiral Deho looked out at the stars one more time. Somewhere out there, an ancient evil was consuming the galaxy, but they were about to learn something about humanity that the Galactic Council was only beginning to understand. Humans did not surrender. Ever. The Kepler Nexus had once been a thriving system. 5 planets, 2 of them inhabited by peaceful aquatic beings who spent their lives creating beautiful coral cities beneath crystal-clear oceans. Now the system was a graveyard. Admiral Deho watched from the bridge of the Indomitable as his fleet approached the coordinates where the last Galactic Defense Force had made their stand. Debris fields stretched for millions of kilometers. Twisted metal that had once been proud warships drifted silently through space. Sir, we're detecting survivors, reported Communications Officer Park. 3 escape pods from what looks like a Centauri battlecruiser. Bring them aboard, Deho ordered, and scan for any other signs of life. Captain Moran stood beside him, studying the tactical displays. The debris patterns suggest the fleet was trying to form a defensive line around the 4th planet. They didn't even get a chance to retreat. How long ago? Based on the orbital mechanics, I'd say 6 hours. Maybe less, 6 hours. They had missed the battle by 6 hours. Deho felt a familiar weight in his chest. The same feeling he had experienced during the colony wars when arriving too late to save a settlement. Admiral, called out Navigator Soman, I'm detecting massive gravitational distortions at the edge of the system. Something big is coming out of hyperspace. The main screen shifted to show the long-range sensors. Space itself seemed to ripple and tear as dark shapes emerged from what looked like wounds in reality. The Voidborn fleet was arriving. Deho had studied the intelligence reports, but seeing them in person was different. The Voidborn ships did not follow any design philosophy he recognized. They were organic curves mixed with geometric patterns that hurt to look at directly. They seemed to exist in normal space and somewhere else at the same time. Count? He asked. 12 primary vessels, Moran reported, each one roughly the size of a heavy cruiser. But sir, the sensor readings are inconsistent. They're showing up on some systems and not others. What about the energy field that disables technology? Science Officer Hayek checked his instruments. I'm detecting some kind of quantum interference, but our systems are still functional. Chief Engineer Junho was right about our hardened electronics. The largest Voidborn ship moved toward the center of the system, where the populated worlds had been. As it approached the 4th planet, Deho watched in horror as the world simply disappeared. Not destroyed, not broken apart, but erased as if it had never existed. "My God," whispered Communications Officer Park. "All ships, this is Admiral Deho," he announced over the fleet communication channel. "Battle stations, prepare for engagement." Across the human fleet, crews rushed to their positions. On the destroyer Harbinger, Captain Moran checked her weapon systems. Railguns were loaded and ready. Missile tubes were primed with kinetic penetrator warheads. The ship's small crew moved with practiced efficiency. "Harbinger to Admiral," Moran reported. "We're ready to test our theory about kinetic weapons." "Approved." "Take us in, Captain." The Harbinger broke formation and accelerated toward the nearest void-borne vessel. The alien ship seemed to notice the approach, turning to face the human destroyer with movements that defied physics. "Range, 200 kilometers and closing," reported Moran's tactical officer. "The target is—" "I'm not sure how to describe this, sir. It's like it's existing in multiple dimensions at once." "Fire," Moran ordered. The Harbinger's main railgun discharged with a flash of blue light. The tungsten projectile accelerated to a significant fraction of light speed, struck the void-borne ship dead center. Unlike the energy weapons that had passed harmlessly through their hulls, the solid projectile tore through the alien vessel's strange armor. Dark fluid sprayed from the wound in the ship's hull. The void-borne vessel shuddered and seemed to become more solid, as if the impact had forced it fully into normal space. "Direct hit," Moran's tactical officer reported. "We're reading atmosphere venting from the target vessel." Across the fleet, human crews cheered. They could hurt these things, but the void-borne were not defenseless. The wounded ship fired back with a weapon that seemed to tear holes in space itself. The beam missed the Harbinger by meters, but where it passed, background radiation spiked to deadly levels. "All ships engage at will," Admiral Deho commanded. "Kinetic weapons only. Energy weapons are ineffective." The human fleet spread out and attacked. The heavy cruiser Defiance, commanded by Captain Sung-ho, opened fire with its massive railguns. Each shot that connected forced the void-borne ships to become more solid, making them easier targets for follow-up attacks. From the assault carrier Storm's Edge, Commander Tajin launched his fighter squadrons. Wing Commander Nari led 12 single-seat fighters armed with kinetic cannons and conventional missiles. The small craft darted between the larger ships, using their speed and maneuverability to strike at the void-borne vessel's weak points. "This is Wing Commander Nari." Her voice crackled over the communication channel. "These things are slow to turn. We can get inside their weapon arcs and hit them from close range." "Understood," Admiral Deho replied. "All fighter squadrons follow Nari's lead." The battle quickly became unlike anything in recorded galactic history. While other species had tried to fight the void-borne with advanced energy weapons and exotic technologies, the humans used simple, brutal tactics that had served them well in 100 planetary conflicts. The frigate Valiant, under Commander Wusung, used its mining charges as improvised weapons. The industrial explosives were never meant for combat, but they worked perfectly against the void-borne's strange hulls. Each detonation seemed to anchor the alien ships more firmly in normal space. "Sir," Science Officer Hayek reported, "I'm detecting something interesting. When we hit them with kinetic weapons, their quantum signature changes. They become more solid, more vulnerable to conventional physics." "What does that mean?" "I think they exist partially outside our dimension. Our weapons are forcing them to choose between staying in our reality where they can be hurt, or retreating to wherever they come from." This gave Admiral Deho an idea. "All ships concentrate fire on the lead vessel. Don't give it a chance to phase out." The human fleet focused their attacks on the largest void-borne ship. Railgun projectiles, missiles, mining charges, and even small arms fire from damaged ships pounded the alien vessel. Under the sustained assault, the ship became fully solid and lost its ability to phase through attacks. Captain Moran saw the opportunity first. "Admiral, request permission to attempt a boarding action." "Negative, Captain. Too dangerous." "Sir, if we can capture one of their ships intact, we might learn how to fight them more effectively." Before Deho could respond, Marine Colonel Bomey's voice came over the channel. "Harbinger, this is Colonel Bomey aboard the assault ship Thunderbolt. My Marines are ready for boarding action." Deho hesitated. Boarding an alien vessel was dangerous under the best circumstances. Boarding a void-borne ship could be suicide, but they needed information about their enemy. "Approved," he decided, "but if things go wrong, retreat immediately." The Thunderbolt approached the damaged Voidborn vessel while the rest of the fleet provided covering fire. Using magnetic grapples and cutting torches, Bomey's Marines forced their way inside the alien ship. "We're inside," Bomey reported over her suit radio. "The atmosphere is toxic, but our environmental suits are holding up. The interior design is unusual." What she found inside defied description. Corridors that seemed to extend in directions that should not exist. Walls that showed glimpses of other realities. And in the center of the ship, a chamber containing what could only be described as a nightmare made flesh. The Voidborn themselves were worse than their ships. They were creatures of living darkness, tentacles and teeth and eyes that looked into dimensions beyond human understanding. But they could be hurt. When Bomey's Marines opened fire with their kinetic weapons, the creatures bled and died just like any other enemy. "They're not invincible," Bomey reported. "They're just really, really dangerous." The battle lasted for 3 hours. When it was over, 7 Voidborn ships had been destroyed and the remaining 5 had retreated through dimensional rifts. The human fleet had lost 2 frigates and suffered damage to 6 other vessels. But they had won. More importantly, they had captured data from the boarded Voidborn ship. Science Officer Heok worked frantically to translate the alien information systems. "Admiral," he reported, "I'm reading star charts. These things have been planning attacks on dozens of systems. And sir, one of them is the Sol system. Earth?" "Yes, sir. According to this data, they consider Earth a priority target. Something about the planet's dimensional stability makes it important to their goals." Admiral Deho studied the captured star charts. The Voidborn were not just random destroyers. They had a plan, a purpose, and that plan included the complete elimination of humanity. "Send a message to all human colonies," he ordered. "Warning of possible attack. And get me a communication link to the Galactic Council. Sir, it's time to let them know that we're not just here to help. We're here to win." As the human fleet regrouped and tended to their wounded, word of their victory spread throughout the galaxy. For the first time since the Voidborn appeared, someone had fought them and won. The impossible had happened. The Deathworlders had proven that the galaxy's greatest nightmare could bleed. But this. News of the human victory at Kepler Nexus spread through the galaxy faster than light itself. For the first time in months, there was hope. Admiral Deho found himself receiving messages from species he had never heard of, all asking the same question: "How did you do it?" The answer was simple, but not easy to explain to civilizations that had spent millennia avoiding conflict. Humans fought dirty, fought smart, and never gave up. They used whatever weapons worked and improvised when those weapons failed. "Sir," Communications Officer Park reported, "we're receiving a priority transmission from the Centauri Defense Fleet. What's left of it, anyway." Admiral Deho activated the main screen. The face that appeared belonged to Admiral Thexvon, a being whose species looked like tall, elegant reptiles. Deho had read about the Centaurians. They were known for their advanced technology and peaceful nature. "Admiral Deho," Thexvon said, his translation device struggling with what seemed to be gratitude and desperation mixed together. "We have been monitoring your engagement with the Voidborn. We request permission to join your fleet." This was unprecedented. Galactic military forces had never served under human command. Most alien species considered human tactics too primitive and brutal for civilized warfare. "What about your own command structure?" Deho asked. "Dead," Thexvon replied simply. "My ship is all that remains of the 3rd Centauri fleet. 17 vessels destroyed in less than an hour. Your tactics work where ours failed. Can your weapons fire kinetic projectiles? We can modify our mass drivers for combat use. They were designed for asteroid mining, but the principle is the same." Deho looked at Captain Miran, who nodded. Every ship they could get would help against what was coming. "Permission granted, Admiral. Transmit your position and we'll send you our tactical data." Similar requests came in over the following days. The survivors of a dozen different fleets asked to join the human force. Most were single ships or small squadrons, the remnants of once mighty armadas that had been destroyed by the Voidborn. Dr. Yuna, aboard the research vessel Prometheus, worked around the clock to analyze the data they had captured from the Voidborn ship. Her findings were disturbing. "Admiral," she reported during a fleet-wide briefing, "the Voidborn are not from our dimension. They exist in a space between realities, feeding on the energy that holds our universe together." "What does that mean for our tactics?" asked Commander Tajin. It means they can only be hurt when they're forced into our reality. Kinetic weapons work because they create physical stress that anchors them in normal space. But there's something else. Dr. Yuna activated a holographic display showing the structure of a void-born ship. They're not just ships. They're living creatures merged with technology. The ships are grown, not built. And they're getting larger. Larger how? Taiho asked. Each time they consume a star system, they use the matter and energy to create bigger versions of themselves. The ships we fought at Kepler were small compared to what they're building. Science Officer Hyok pulled up his own analysis. I've been studying the dimensional rifts they use for travel. There's a pattern to their movements. They're not attacking randomly. They're following specific routes through space. Routes to where? As near as I can tell, they're moving toward the galactic core. But they're also targeting specific types of worlds. High population, advanced technology, strong dimensional stability. Captain Moran understood immediately. They're not just destroying civilizations. They're harvesting them. And Earth fits all their criteria, Dr. Yuna added quietly. High population, advancing technology, and something else. Our planet has unusual dimensional properties. Something about being a death world has made our reality more stable than most. The implications were terrifying. Earth was not just another target. It was a priority. How long before they reach Sol? Taiho asked. Based on their current consumption rate and movement patterns, 6 weeks. Maybe less if they stop trying to convert every system and focus on direct assault. 6 weeks to prepare for the largest battle in human history. 6 weeks to train alien crews in human tactics. 6 weeks to turn a small exploration fleet into the galaxy's last line of defense. Admiral Deho activated the fleet communication system. All ships, all crews. I know many of you are far from home, serving under commanders you barely know, using tactics that go against everything you were taught. But we are all that stands between the Voidborn and the complete destruction of galactic civilization. He paused, looking around the bridge at his crew. Communications Officer Park was barely out of academy. Navigator Soman had never fired a shot in anger before this mission, yet they had all proven themselves against impossible odds. The enemy is building larger ships. They're coming in greater numbers, and they're targeting our home worlds. We cannot retreat. We cannot negotiate. We can only fight. The response was immediate. Every ship in the fleet, human and alien alike, confirmed their readiness for battle. Captain Sung-ho of the heavy cruiser Defiance volunteered to lead a strike force against the Voidborn supply lines. Wing Commander Nari requested permission to modify her fighters for boarding actions against the larger enemy vessels. But it was Commander Wusung of the frigate Valiant who made the suggestion that changed everything. Admiral, he said during a tactical planning session, we've been fighting defensively. What if we took the fight to them? What do you mean? The captured data shows their main construction facility, a massive structure in the Vega system where they're building their largest ships. If we could destroy that facility, it would cripple their ability to create the Dreadnought-class vessels, Dr. Yuna finished. But the facility is heavily defended. According to the data, there are at least 50 Voidborn ships protecting it. 50 ships we can't handle with our current force, Moran pointed out. What if we didn't try to handle them? Wusung asked. What if we just focused on the facility itself? Deho studied the tactical data. The Voidborn construction facility was enormous, but it was also stationary. Unlike their ships, it could not phase out of normal space to avoid damage. A suicide mission, he said quietly. Maybe, Wusung agreed. But if we succeed, we buy the galaxy time to prepare proper defenses. And if we fail, we at least go down fighting instead of waiting for them to come to us. The debate that followed was intense. Many of the alien commanders argued that such a mission would be wasteful. Their technology was too valuable to throw away on a desperate attack. But the human crews understood the logic. Sometimes the only way to win was to risk everything. I'll take volunteers only, Deho finally decided. Any ship or crew that wants to withdraw to defensive positions can do so. No shame in that choice. Not a single vessel withdrew. The modified plan was elegant in its simplicity. The fastest ships would attack the facility directly, using every kinetic weapon they could carry. The remaining vessels would create diversions, drawing the defending Voidborn ships away from the primary target. Chief Engineer Junho worked with teams from across the fleet to modify their weapons. Mining charges were converted into ship killer bombs. Railguns were overcharged to fire at maximum velocity. Even the research vessels were fitted with improvised weapons. "We'll get one shot at this," Junho reported. "After the first attack, their defenses will adapt. We have to make it count." Dr. Yuna made a discovery that changed their tactics one final time. "The facility isn't just building ships," she announced. "It's building a gateway, a permanent portal that would allow unlimited void-born forces to enter our dimension." The stakes had just gotten higher. This was not just about stopping one enemy fleet. This was about preventing an invasion that could consume the entire universe. Admiral Deho gathered his senior officers one last time before the mission. "Questions? What happens if we don't make it back?" Navigator Soman asked. "Then the galaxy will remember that when the universe needed heroes, humans answered the call." Captain Moran smiled grimly. "No pressure. None at all," Deho replied. "Just the fate of all known life hanging in the balance." As the human fleet prepared for its desperate assault, messages poured in from across the galaxy. Species that had never acknowledged humanity now sent their prayers and blessings. The Galactic Council transmitted a formal apology for 50 years of prejudice and discrimination. But the message that meant the most came from Earth itself. Fleet Admiral Chen, the highest-ranking human military officer, sent a simple transmission. "Make us proud." Admiral Deho looked out at the stars one last time before the fleet entered hyperspace. Somewhere out there in the Vega system, an enemy was preparing to destroy everything he had ever known or loved. But they were about to learn something that the rest of the galaxy was beginning to understand. You do not threaten human homes and expect to survive the consequences. The Vega system looked like the inside of a nightmare, where once a bright star had illuminated peaceful worlds. Now there was only a dim red glow surrounded by twisted structures that hurt to look at directly. The Voidborn had turned the entire system into a factory for producing their reality-destroying weapons. Admiral Deho stared at the main screen from the bridge of the Indomitable. The enemy construction facility stretched across millions of kilometers, a writhing mass of organic technology that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions at once. Around it, 50 Voidborn ships patrolled in complex patterns. "Sir," Science Officer Hayok reported quietly, "the facility is almost complete. I'm detecting massive energy buildups. If that gateway opens," he did not need to finish. Everyone understood. An unlimited number of Voidborn could pour through a permanent portal. The galaxy would fall within days. "All ships, this is Admiral Deho," he announced over the fleet communication channel. "You know the mission. You know the stakes. Today we find out if the galaxy has a future." The human fleet had grown to 43 vessels. The alien survivors who had joined them brought different technologies and perspectives, but they had all learned to fight like humans. Desperate, clever, and completely unwilling to surrender. "Phase 1 commenced," Deho ordered. Captain Sungho led the first wave in his heavy cruiser Defiance, along with 8 other ships. Their job was to draw the Voidborn defenders away from the facility. They charged straight into the enemy formation, firing everything they had. The Voidborn response was immediate and violent. Dark energy beams lashed out, tearing holes in space itself. But the human and alien crews had learned to fight these creatures. They used evasive maneuvers, spread formations, and constant movement to avoid the worst of the enemy fire. "Defiance to Admiral," Sungho reported as his ship shook under enemy fire. "We have their attention. Facility defenses are moving to intercept. Phase 2 execute," Deho commanded. Wing Commander Nari led every fighter and small craft in the fleet on a desperate run at the facility itself. Her modified fighter squadron had been equipped with the most powerful kinetic weapons they could carry. Behind them, assault shuttles carried Marine Colonel Bomi and her boarding teams. "This is Nari." Her voice crackled over the communication channel. "Beginning attack run. These things are massive, but they have weak points. I can see gaps in their dimensional shielding." The fighters dove toward the facility like angry wasps attacking a giant. Their kinetic cannons and improvised weapons tore at the structure's outer defenses. Where they struck, reality seemed to solidify, making the alien technology vulnerable to conventional attacks. "Marines away," Colonel Bomi reported as her assault shuttles reached the facility. "We're going inside to plant charges on critical systems." What Bomi and her teams found inside the facility was beyond description. Corridors that folded back on themselves, chambers where time moved at different speeds, and at the center, the gateway itself, a tear in reality that showed glimpses of the Voidborn's home dimension. "This is Colonel Bomey," she reported over her suit radio. "I've found the gateway controls. But Admiral, this thing is more than just a portal. It's some kind of dimensional anchor. They're using it to stabilize their entire presence in our universe. Can you destroy it?" "Working on it. But sir, we're not alone in here. There are void-born creatures guarding the core systems. The fighting inside the facility was unlike anything in human military history. Bomey's Marines battled creatures that existed partially outside normal space, using weapons that fired solid projectiles because energy weapons passed harmlessly through their targets. Outside, the main battle raged on. Commander Wusung's frigate Valiant made a suicide run at one of the largest void-born defenders, his mining charges tearing a hole in the enemy ship large enough to fly through. "Valiant to fleet." Wusung's voice was calm despite the chaos around him. "I'm going to ram their command ship. Tell my family I did my duty." The frigate accelerated to maximum speed and struck the void-born vessel dead center. The explosion lit up the entire system, and when the light faded, both ships were gone. Phase 3. Admiral Deho said quietly. "All remaining ships attack the facility. Everything we have." The Indomitable led the final assault, supported by every vessel that could still fight. Railguns fired at maximum rate. Missile launchers emptied their magazines. Even the science vessels opened fire with improvised weapons. Dr. Yuna, aboard the research vessel Prometheus, had made one final modification to their weapons. "Admiral, I've created a quantum destabilizer using void-born technology. It should disrupt their dimensional anchoring. But I need to get close to the facility to use it." "Too dangerous," Deho replied. "Sir, with respect, we're all dead anyway if this doesn't work." The Prometheus broke formation and dove toward the facility's core. Dr. Yuna fired her improvised weapon at point-blank range. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. The entire facility began to collapse in on itself as its dimensional supports failed. "All units, retreat," Deho ordered. "The facility is going critical." But not everyone could escape. The Prometheus was caught in the facility's collapse. Dr. Yuna's last transmission was barely audible. "Gateway is destabilizing. Mission accomplished." The explosion that followed was visible from 3 star systems away. When it was over, the void-born facility was gone, along with most of their defending fleet. The gateway to their dimension had been permanently sealed, but the victory came at a terrible cost. 15 human ships were destroyed in the battle. Hundreds of crew members, including some of the finest officers in the fleet, were dead. Admiral Deho stood on his damaged bridge, looking at the casualty reports. Communications Officer Park was injured but alive. Navigator Soman had tears in her eyes as she read the names of friends who would never see home again. "Sir," Captain Moran reported from the equally damaged Harbinger, "we're receiving messages from across the galaxy. The Voidborn are retreating. All of them. Every attacking force is withdrawing to their home dimension." "Why?" Science Officer Hayuk, his arm in a sling, studied his readings. The facility wasn't just building ships and gateways. It was their primary dimensional anchor in our universe. With it gone, they can't maintain a stable presence here. The Voidborn threat was over, but the galaxy was forever changed. Entire civilizations had been erased. Trillions were dead. The survivors would need decades to rebuild. 6 months later, Admiral Deho stood in the same council chamber where Velthari had first asked for humanity's help. But now the circumstances were very different. The Galactic Council had formally invited Earth to join as a permanent member with full voting rights. "People of Earth," Velthari said, her crystalline body glowing with gratitude, "we offer you not just membership but leadership. Your species has proven that courage and determination can overcome any threat. Ambassador Kyunga, Earth's first representative to the Galactic Council, accepted the position with grace. We are honored by your trust. But we want to make something clear. Humanity will defend any species under threat, regardless of politics or past grievances." Deho, now promoted to Fleet Admiral of the newly formed Galactic Defense Forces, watched the ceremony from the observation deck. Beside him, Captain Miran wore the uniform of his second-in-command. "Think it will last?" she asked. "This new cooperation between species? As long as we remember what we learned fighting the Voidborn," he replied. "That when facing the impossible, courage matters more than technology." Below them, the council chamber buzzed with activity as hundreds of species worked together to rebuild their shattered galaxy. It would not be easy. There would be disagreements, conflicts, and challenges that seemed impossible to overcome. But they had learned something important from the humans who had saved them all. Sometimes the only way to win is to refuse to lose. 3 years later, Deho stood on the bridge of humanity's new flagship, the UES Defiant, named in honor of Captain Sungho and his crew. The ship was patrolling the galaxy's edge, watching for threats that might emerge from the darkness between stars. "Admiral," Navigator Soman reported, "we're receiving a distress call from the Andromeda Relay. Unknown vessels attacking civilian transports." Deho smiled. It was the same expression he had worn before the Battle of Vega. Determined, confident, and completely unwilling to back down from a fight. "Set course for Andromeda," he ordered. Maximum speed. The galaxy had its guardians now, and they would answer every call for help no matter how impossible the odds might seem, because that was what humans did. They protected those who could not protect themselves, fought when fighting seemed hopeless, and never, ever gave up. The Deathworlder fleet had answered the universe's plea for help, and they would keep answering. For as long as the stars continued to shine,